The story begins with a woman named Sarah who had moved to a new town with her son Chris. Her new house was right next to the forest. Sarah's husband had left her. That's why she lived alone with her son. That day, they were going to their new house in their car. On the way, Sarah and Chris were having a lot of fun, laughing, and were excited about the new house. But then suddenly, Chris screamed loudly and pointed to the front. Sarah immediately applied the brake and somehow managed the car. Then she quickly looked at her son to find out if he was hurt. Chris was fine, but his face was white with fear. Sarah took a deep breath and got out of the car. She saw a woman standing in the middle of the road. That woman was standing very still, but her lips were moving very fast, as if she was muttering something. Sarah slowly moved towards that woman, but then that woman suddenly turned her head and started looking straight at Chris, who was still sitting in the car. There was something strange in her eyes, something that made Sarah's hair stand up. For a moment, Sarah felt that she should move back from there. She didn't even try to ask that woman anything. She just bent down and picked up the broken side mirror of the car and quickly got back in the car and got out of there. Then a few days passed, and one day Sarah went to the basement to get some tools. That's when she suddenly heard Chris screaming from above. She came up running in fear, where she saw that Chris was standing on a chair and was pointing at something out of fear. Sarah looked around and saw that there was a big spider on the wall in the corner of the room. She understood that Chris was afraid of it because he was very scared of spiders. Sarah slowly moved closer, carefully grabbed it, and locked it in a glass jar and took it out toward the garden. Chris also came with her and said in anger that the spider should be killed. Sarah smiled and said that the spider didn't do anything to Chris, so it wouldn't be right to kill it. But Chris said in more anger that if his dad was here, he would have listened to him. As soon as she heard this, Sarah became silent. Her smile disappeared from her face because this thing had hurt her inside. For a few moments, she stood there silently and left the spider in the garden. But at that moment, Chris came in anger and stamped his foot hard and crushed the spider. Seeing this, Sarah got very angry. But before she could say anything, Chris ran away from there. Sarah also immediately ran after him, where Chris went straight to the forest, and in a short while, Sarah lost sight of her son. Her heart was filled with fear. She kept calling Chris's name again and again, but there was no answer from anywhere. Then her eyes fell on a strange place in the middle of the forest, where the ground was sunken, as if a very heavy thing had fallen from the sky and collided there. Sarah slowly started moving closer to that place. Then suddenly Chris was standing right next to her. Sarah was shocked, but as soon as she saw him, her anger and fear both disappeared. She quickly went to him and hugged him tightly. Then the next day, Sarah went to pick up her son Chris from school. She had a talent show flyer in her hand. On the way, she smiled and told Chris that he should take part in it. This will give him new friends and he will get to mix a little in this town. But Chris was sad and said that he did not want new friends. Sarah looked at him lovingly and said that when she was his age, she had also come to a new city. And in the beginning, she also found everything strange, but gradually everything became fine. However, Sarah herself was not completely comfortable in this new town. That evening, she was having dinner with her boss Luis and his family. The atmosphere was happy, everyone was laughing, but everything felt quiet. Luis's brother was constantly talking, trying to keep the atmosphere light. He started telling the story of an accident while talking, but then Luis interrupted and said, "Sarah, there is an old woman in your town who looks very strange, right?" Sarah's attention went there immediately. The woman Luis was talking about was the same woman whom Sarah had seen standing in the middle of the road at the beginning of the story. Luis said that the son of that old woman used to study in his class. Luis said that one day that old woman suddenly came to school and forcibly started taking her son from there. The school staff tried to stop her, but she was very angry. Finally, the school staff threw her and her son out of the school. A few days later, everyone got shocking news that the son of that woman had died. People used to say that it was an accident, but the rumor was that that woman had killed her son during a fight. Hearing this, Sarah's face turned pale. The same scary image of that woman began to circulate in her mind that she had seen on the road a few days ago. She tried to end the matter there, but she was restless from inside. And in the middle of the night, Sarah woke up, suddenly with a loud voice. She got scared when she saw that her son Chris's bed was empty. She immediately started calling him, but there was no answer in the whole house. Scared, Sarah got down and saw that the kitchen door was opening and closing heavily from the wind. She picked up the torch and went out. Then Sarah went towards the forest and kept calling Chris's name again and again. Suddenly she realized that someone was hiding behind a tree. Her heart trembled with fear, but she gathered her courage and slowly reached near that tree. She went there and spread the torchlight, but there was no one there. Sarah kept calling Chris again, but she didn't get any answer. Now her fear was increasing. She came home running and started calling the emergency number with trembling hands. At the same time, she heard the sound of something falling behind her. She immediately turned around and saw that Chris was standing in the middle of the living room. Sarah was shocked for a while. She started having a lot of questions in her mind. If Chris was really here, then who was she calling? She suddenly started getting scared that maybe she herself was going through some mental trouble. So the next day she went to the doctor. The doctor listened to her carefully. Then he looked at the old mark on her forehead and asked, "How did you get this mark?" Sarah thought a little and told that this is a mark from a year-old accident, but she doesn't remember much of that accident. After which the doctor didn't ask any more questions. He just gave some anti-anxiety pills and said that she should rest for a few days. On the first night, Sarah hesitated a little before taking the medicine, but in the end, she took the pill. In a while, her eyes became heavy and she slept soundly. The next morning when she woke up, she saw that Chris was sitting next to her bed. He was holding a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Seeing this, she smiled and became happy. Because before today, Chris had never done anything like this. Then slowly, everything started getting normal again. Sarah saw that now Chris was also playing with the other kids in the school. He was not alone like before, but he was happy and more social. That day when both were returning home, Sarah asked, "Who were the kids you were playing with today?" Chris took some names and one of them was Stuart. Sarah was a little shocked because earlier Chris had said that he didn't like Stuart at all. She said with a slight surprise, "But you used to say that Stuart is not good." Chris kept quiet for a while and then said, "If you want, I will stay away from him." Sarah smiled and said, "No, son. The more friends, the better." Their car was slowly reaching near the bridge. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief, but the next moment her face froze. In the middle of the bridge, the same old woman was standing on the road. Chris saw her and got scared. Sarah panicked and honked, but that woman did not move at all. Sarah got out of the car helplessly and went towards her. She said in a calm voice that she should leave the way, but the old woman looked into her eyes and said in a trembling voice, "He is not your son." Sarah's eyes widened. Then an old man came there, Brady, who was the husband of that old woman. He was scared and was apologizing again and again. After which he introduced himself and said that his wife was not well. She often says such things. Sarah was about to say something when the old woman slowly started moving towards Chris. Sarah felt a strange anxiety. She quickly finished the conversation and went toward the car. But the old woman had now come very close to the car window. She bent down to look inside and her eyes stuck directly on Chris's face. Then suddenly she started screaming loudly, "He is not your son!" Sarah got scared and panicked. Then that old woman started hitting her head hard on the car window. Brady came running and tried to stop her, but she was out of control. Sarah got scared, started the engine, and quickly moved the car forward. When she turned around, Brady was trying to catch his wife, who was still screaming. Sarah's heart was beating fast. Even after reaching home, her mind did not calm down. She took the medicine, but still the scream of that woman echoed in her ears. The next day, Sarah decided that she would not sit peacefully without knowing the truth. She went back to the same bridge and went straight to that old woman's house. But as soon as she went toward the courtyard, she saw that the dead body of that old woman was lying on the ground. Her head was half buried in the soil, and there were crows all around her, which were pecking at her back again and again. After a while, the police arrived there and started questioning Sarah. In the meantime, she saw that Chris was wrestling with a police officer. For a moment, Sarah had the illusion that Chris had twisted that man's wrist so hard that it broke. But the next moment, everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened. Later, when Sarah went to take a bath, she saw that her towel was covered with blood. She got scared and started looking in the mirror. When she saw that the blood was flowing from her forehead, she quickly took care of herself, bandaged the wound, and started preparing to go to work. Upon reaching the office, her boss Louis saw her and said that she should take a few days off. but Sarah refused. She said in a tired voice that sometimes she feels as if she does not know her son well. Louise smiled and said, "Every mother sometimes feels like this. Sometimes children look like angels, sometimes like demons." After which Sarah went to the last rites of that old woman, but everyone's eyes were on her, because she was the first one to see the body. The atmosphere there was strange. All the windows of the house were covered with black cloth, and people were talking in a low voice. Sarah felt as if everything was changing around her, something that she was not able to understand. Then Brady, who was the husband of that old woman, came to her and offered her a drink to lighten the atmosphere. Then he pointed to the wall in front of her and said that the picture there is of his son James. Brady said in a low voice that when James was born, he was very happy. But when he was 8 years old, everything changed. He said that from that time, his wife was slowly going crazy. She started to feel that James is not real, but someone else who has taken his son's place. Sarah asked in fear what happened to James. Brady took a deep breath and said that the accident was his fault. He had accidentally crushed his own son in the car. Hearing this, Sarah felt that now maybe she would have to try to make everything normal again. But strange incidents started once again. One morning when Sarah went for jogging in the forest, she saw the ground, there where Chris's doll was kept, near the same big pit, which was made some time ago after something fell from the sky. She bent down to pick up the doll, but her eyes stayed on that pit. She felt as if the bottom of the pit was shaking, as if it was going deeper and deeper. Then she returned home and immediately asked Chris whether he had gone to the forest alone. Chris refused. Sarah showed the doll and said that she had found it there, but he refused again. Sarah shouted loudly to know the truth. At that moment, Chris burst into anger. He shouted that he was not lying, and in anger pushed the table hard and threw it towards his mother. Sarah was shocked to see his strength and anger. She had never seen her son like this before. After that, when Sarah came out of the shower, she heard a strange voice from Chris's room. That voice was not like a human, but seemed like an animal. So she slowly went to the door and bent down to look inside, where Chris was lying on the floor on his hands and knees. His body was twisted in a strange way, and terrible sounds were coming out of his mouth. Suddenly, she saw a spider walking nearby. He caught it quickly and put it in his mouth without any hesitation and chewed it out of fear. A scream came out of Sarah's mouth. At that moment, everything calmed down, and Chris's voice came from inside the room in a completely normal and innocent tone. He came to the door and said that he should sleep now. Sarah stood shivering. Just a slow good night came out of her lips. Then the next day, Sarah took him to the doctor, but the doctor said that everything is normal. Still, Sarah was deeply saddened by the fact that something was going very wrong. She hid a camera in Chris's room so that she could know the truth. At the same time, she stopped taking medicines. She was afraid that she would remain unconscious and something bad would happen around Chris. But she had a terrible dream at night. She saw Chris poking his fingers in the mark on her forehead. She screamed and woke up. When she came out in the morning, Chris was combing his hair and humming. Then Sarah remembered that there was a talent show in the school today. She also reached where Luis was sitting with her. Chris went on stage and started singing. At first, everything seemed normal, but after a few moments, Sarah felt something strange. She saw that the entire audience had disappeared. Now there was only Chris standing there, and his voice had become terribly distorted. She got scared and immediately ran away from there. Luis ran after her and asked her if she was okay. Sarah said in a trembling voice, "That boy is not my son." Saying this, she returned home quickly. When she reached home, she immediately saw the camera recording. But whatever she saw, it put her in more trouble. To find out the truth, Sarah went to Brady. When she reached there, she saw that all the windows of the house were not covered. She asked him the reason for it. Brady said that his wife used mirrors to know if the one in front was real or not. Sarah said in a trembling voice that his wife was right, because now she was convinced that her son was not her real son. She asked Brady to look at the camera. Brady saw the video and said that he did not see anything strange in it. Sarah shouted in anger that has she gone mad now? Brady got scared and said that he does not think so. Then suddenly in anger, Sarah threw the camera on the ground. When she returned home, she started fixing the camera. Then Chris slowly came to her from behind. He said that why was he left in the school? Sarah tried to act normal while hiding her fear and said that everything is fine. But now she adopted a new method so that the truth could be revealed. At dinner, she said that she likes cheese a lot. Chris immediately filled the whole plate with cheese and started eating, while Sarah knew that the real Chris did not like cheese at all, after which she said that, "Let's play his favorite game." This was the same game in which Sarah used to count till 3, and then both of them used to make a strange face together. But this time, Chris did not understand what she was saying. Sarah's heart sank. Now she was completely convinced that this boy standing in front was not her son. She said in a trembling voice, "Who are you and where is my son?" The boy's face changed in a moment. Instead of innocence, anger and hatred came into his eyes. He shouted loudly and grabbed Sarah's hand and threw her against the wall. Sarah screamed in pain, but he did not listen to her. The next moment, he slapped her again and threw her across the kitchen. Sarah's head hit the wall hard, and in a few seconds, her eyes closed. Then the boy who was not Chris now dragged Sarah out. He reached the courtyard and dug a hole and buried Sarah's head in it. That fake boy kept filling the soil hard so much that he himself fell there tired and fainted. But in the meantime, Sarah regained consciousness. She used all her strength to pull her head out of the soil, after which she dragged that fake Chris and took him to the basement of the house. She wanted to know what it was that was living in front of her with the face of her son. She picked up a mirror and kept it near his face. Whatever she saw in the mirror, Sarah's scream came out because there was no Chris there, but a terrifying, distorted face, half human and half a scary creature. As soon as he heard the voice, that fake boy woke up. Sarah moved away from the fear and said in a trembling voice, "What did you do to my real son?" That creature remained silent. Then suddenly he slapped Sarah and started strangling her. Sarah used all her strength and suddenly turned around and pushed him hard. That boy fell, and for a while he seemed unconscious. Sarah trembled in fear and ran outside and closed the basement door tightly. The scream coming from inside was still echoing in her ears. Sarah held her head and sat down, but her breasts were still strong. She knew that whatever happened, it started from the same place. She picked up the torch and ran toward the forest with all her strength. She was sure that the whole mystery is hidden in the same pit where she and Chris went for the first time. She reached the edge of the pit and slowly started coming down. There was a sticky part in the middle where the ground looked like mud. Then she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and surrendered herself to the ground. After a while, she woke up in a dark, narrow cave. There was a lot of mud and moist air all around. The sticky water was dripping from the walls. Sarah kept crawling forward with her knees bent until she reached a large open space. There, in the middle of the ground, Chris was lying unconscious. She ran up to him, picked him up in her arms, and started crying loudly. At the same time, a scary growl came from the corner of the cave. Sarah turned the torch while shivering where she saw a faceless, sticky creature shivering. Gradually, the mud started shaking, and many such creatures started coming out of it. Seeing this, Sarah immediately picked up Chris in her arms and started running away from there with all her strength. She moved toward the tunnel, but a creature from behind reached close to her. It slipped and came very close to Sarah and grabbed her hands. Sarah picked up the torch and attacked it, but then she saw that the creature was now taking her form. Sarah was stunned for a while. Then she gathered all her strength and attacked the head of the creature, after which Sarah somehow came out of the cave and picked up Chris in her arms and kept running toward the outside of the forest. She reached the car, put Chris on the seat, and quietly went inside the house so that she could have tea. Just then, a sound came from the basement below, from where the fake Chris was still calling out to his mother. Sarah's eyes were filled with tears, but this time she did not show any fear. She had decided that now everything would have to end forever. She slowly went out, lit the match, and set the house on fire. In a little while, the flames engulfed the entire house. Sarah stood behind and watched while the fire was turning the house into ashes. After a while, Sarah and Chris started living in a new city. Now everything was back to normal. Chris also got his new cycle, and he was smilingly riding his cycle in the park. But Sarah's fear was still alive. She often secretly clicked pictures of her son, just to see if the face in the camera was really Chris's or not. Then in the last scene, Sarah was sitting inside her house. There were hundreds of mirrors on the walls. In every direction, her and Chris's faces were visible. She was carefully looking at her son in every mirror to make sure that no fake face had entered her house. And with this, the story ends. See you with the next video. Thanks for watching.